Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Tawana Rivers. This is the 10K Project. And tonight we are highlighting yet another amazing Black founder on our Bet on Black pitch. I want to welcome to all of you, Arlen Hamilton, one of the hottest VCs in the game. Author, I listen, I'm a fan. I'm not even going front. I'm a fan. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, she has raised millions, tens of millions of dollars for founders. The last I saw, you were at 200 founders. Did that number change?
That's right. We are a little over 200. We started continuing investing more and more in those founders. So that number is about 205. Nice. Because we're doubling, tripling down on the current ones.
Very, very nice. I'll let Arlen tell you all about her background and all of that. Just know that we are in amazing company this evening. And the fact that she came to the 10K Project to tell us about her new venture is so very exciting and such an honor. I am going to, for all of you who have never been to a Bet on Black pitch before, because we made this a public event, first of all, welcome, welcome, welcome. We hope that what you see here this evening will inspire you to invest in more Black founders. We hope that it also will inspire you to join us here at the 10K Project, because we think we're pretty dope here. Think we're doing something really good to help the cause. To all of our existing members who are on, again, thank y'all for being loyal and ride or die with us. You come every single Tuesday and we lift up these Black founders and they are getting results and they're very appreciative. They tell me all the time how grateful they are to the 10K community. So let's keep up the good work. So thank you all. And what I'm going to do for anyone who just joined, I'm going to pull up the campaign page. Arlen's campaign is on Republic. So I'm going to pull that up. We'll have the link in the chat for you throughout the evening. It'll be there. You can click on the campaign link, but I'm just going to go over some highlights for you because I know many of you, this is going to be your first intro into equity crowdfunding. Okay. So let me share my screen. All right. You all should see my screen. Here's the campaign page. Thus far, the campaign has raised $278,780. There is 601 investors. And I love that because I looked at this about an hour ago and it was 600 investors.
That's right. I saw that
has
too.
Responded.
I saw that too.
So I love that someone's already acting this evening. 90 days left to invest. And I always give, for those people who have been here before, I always talk about the time left to invest. Even though there are 90 days here, we don't want to wait till the last minute, right? There are many things that happen in the lifespan of a campaign that allows the founder to get the money they need before that deadline comes. And so we want to be able to get in on these campaigns and these deals early, right? The fact that they're presented to us as a way, the Jobs Act made them available to us is a blessing within itself. But now that we have the opportunity, we don't want the clock to tick away. And I always go back to our CEO, Cherie Warwick, one of our earlier campaigns last year. She loved it, but she waited to the last minute and he got his money and the campaign came down early and she wasn't able to get in. And so if it happened to the 10K Project CEO, it could happen to any of us, right? So when we see something we like, this is not investment advice, but when you see something you like, we need to act and we need to respond. That's in life, period, right? So let's just be mindful of that. 90 days seems like a lot of time, but Arlen and her team and all of the other founders, this is not the only place they're coming to present their campaigns. They're working diligently behind the scenes to raise the capital. Okay. It's a $100 minimum investment. These particular deal terms, this is a safe note. So for those of you who are not familiar with that, safe note is a simple agreement for future equity. Okay. And Arlen is trying to raise up to the $5 million, which is the maximum. I want to show you the documents here. The Form C is the legal document that all equity crowdfunders are responsible for filing with the SEC. So you want to look through all of these documents as you do your due diligence on this campaign. And I also want you to spend a lot of time reading the campaign page in its entirety. The founders put a lot of time and energy into making sure the information that they add to this campaign page is exactly what you need to see and what they know you need to see to be able to make an informed decision. So you want to take advantage of all of the information. So click on every link, scroll through every single page. And if you have additional questions outside of this evening, please take the time to go to the discussion page. This is where you should ask any follow-up questions that you don't get asked and answered this evening. My commitment is to stay with you this evening until the last question is asked and answered. But if you think of something in the middle of the night, you wake up in the morning like, oh, I didn't ask that, and that's the one question I need to know, please come here to the discussion page, and Arla and her team will answer your questions here. I also want you to come here when you're doing your due diligence, because other people have already asked amazing questions that may give you more insight. Okay, so with that said, I am going to stop sharing. Again, the link will be put in the chat throughout the evening. And I am going to welcome and introduce you again to Ms. Arlen Hamilton. Arlen, the floor is yours, my dear.
Thank you so much. That's really awesome. I wish I knew about this last year when we were doing our Reg CF for Backstage. Yeah, so just, the way this will work is I'll talk to you very casually about this. And anytime there is a question, I don't know if people can write in the Q&A section so I can actually see the question.
And that's where we actually want questions to be.
Interrupt me with the question. Happy to talk about it. I want to address, well, first I'll tell you a little bit about myself, then I'll address a little bit of what you went over there. So if you're not familiar, I saw some people are familiar, but if you're not, just know that I enjoy that. I could talk about Backstage Capital, our founders and runner every day of my life, and I do. So if you're not familiar, the quick version is that I'm 41 now. About 7 years ago, I was homeless and on food stamps. And for 3 years prior to that, had been trying to raise a venture fund to invest in underrepresented founders at the time. Today, we call them underestimated, and we actually have that trademarked in several regions. Because I think it's more accurate. And about 7 years ago, it'll be 7 years in September, I received, while living at the airport in San Francisco, I received my first investment for Backstage Capital. Backstage Capital has now gone on to invest in 200 plus companies. And we have been the first check in many companies over the years, or a very important check, or in some cases, we were not the first check or even a make or break check, but we were led into rounds that were very competitive because people wanted us on their cap table. So on their investor list. So it's a huge milestone, very proud of it. And, the next decade or so is about educating investors and not just venture capitalists, because I wasn't a child saying I want to be a VC one day. I did it because it was the way I could get in and break in. But I love crowdfunding. I love angel investors. I have an entire course about crowdfunding and about angel investing because it's so dear to me. And last year, Backstage Capital was the first fund in the United States to use Regulation CF crowdfunding to raise for its management entity. And I think there have been some copycats since, but none have done exactly what we did, which was raise $5 million in 8 days from 6,500 people. So I saw the power of the crowd very, very intensely. And it's been wonderful since, keeping up with everybody. We have a few, our investor, we have who invested, we have an update coming out in a few days and some really exciting things. And through ups and downs and through everything that Backstage has gone through, we now have this army really of incredible community. So with Runner, that's why I decided we have to have at least some portion of our raise be part of the crowd. So the 5 million, I do want to point this out. You're talking about timing. The 5 million is in conjunction with our raise with funds as well. So it's not all going to come through Reg CF. So once we reach 5 million total through funds, through high net worth individuals, all the people we've already been talking to, we are going to close it. Now, it could be the October 31st date that's on there because it may take that long, but it also could be the 1st of September. It could be any date. So I would encourage you to be part of it. Once we decide we're closing, we're closing. And we raised about $2.3 million earlier this year in an earlier round. And we had some press and TechCrunch and several other places, and you can do some research there. So there's a lot of like private interest in it as well. I wanted to touch on, so that was one thing I want to touch on. Another thing that I was just writing notes is, yeah, like I said, I keep the questions coming in, I'll check on them. Everything is really transparent. So because you might wonder why I went from working at Backstage, which I still, by the way, am the managing partner and work on Backstage every single day of my life. So I'm still there. But you might wonder why I'm doing that and Runner when Backstage is such a huge lift. Well, the two things that the 200 companies have asked me the most, one was and has been, can you help us raise more money? Or do you have more money? The second, very close behind, was, can you help us hire? So what Runner does, if you go to hirerunner.co, H-I-R-E runner.co, you can look at the website as we talk. Runner, and actually I'll pull it up too if you want. Runner matches trustworthy fractional operations talent with inclusive companies of all sizes. So let's say you're a solopreneur, or you have 3 people on your team or 7 people on your team. Let's say you raised a couple $100,000, or you've bootstrapped to that, or you've done a lot more than that. And you need someone to come in, or you realize you need someone to come in to help you with operations, executive assistant, general ops, COO, chief of staff, et cetera. But you can't really afford $120,000 a year, or the $80,000 a year, or the $72,000 a year, plus burden for all sorts of insurances and things like that for one person. But you could potentially afford to bring somebody in for 15 hours a week on an hourly rate. Now, if you wanted to do that, you certainly could try. But what we do at Runner is we handle all of the sourcing, all of the interviewing, vetting. We then hire and onboard. We are the employer of record, which means they are W-2 employees. They're not just quote unquote gig workers. It's a hybrid because they're very flexible what they can do. But we are compliant in 50 states plus District of Columbia. And we got compliance state by state, one at a time over the past 10 months, which is a huge feat. On top of that, we speak with our customers, find out what they need, not just what they need in terms of the work, but who they are, what drives them, what kind of person would be a good match. We do the matching, and then we do the scheduling, which is a huge lift. And then we help with payments. So if you pay us and we pay the runner. So it's a full service when it comes to operations talent. One way to think about it, one use case that's been very interesting has been when big companies have massive layoffs. Now, layoffs are close to home. I just had layoffs at Backstage. We've gone through all kinds of things. So many companies have experienced layoffs, and usually the founders and the teams are just heartbroken by it. What we are able to do is go in and capture some of the people who have been let go and bring them within days to new jobs because we can match. We already have the system going. We did it internally that way. One of the portfolio companies at Backstage had to unfortunately let their whole team go. Their tech team, they were going to go find a way. Their marketing team, they were going to go find a way. But their operations team, it was like, where do I go? I talked to one of the people who was being laid off, and I said, what are you going to do? And they said, well, next Monday, I'm going to start looking for another job. And I said, what if next Monday you had another job? And we put them through the system. It took just a few hours, and they were being matched. So that is what we see as the future and the near-term future, because we can turn lemons into lemonade and be a soft landing for a lot of those companies. Let me see just for a second about the questions. Oh, I see Frederick has several questions.
Frederick came with questions. Okay.
Came with questions. I'll answer a couple, then I'll come back to talking to you more about it. So I'll start with Ryan Knight. Ryan wants to know, are Canadians able to join your investment fund training course? Yes, actually, absolutely. If you go to Arlen was here on Twitter or Instagram, and you go to the profiles of either one, my Linktree link is there. Click on that Linktree list. Again, Arlen, ARLAN, was here on Instagram or Twitter. Go to the profile, click on the Linktree link, and you'll see, I think it says 80% off of my investor course. And anybody, we have students, we have about 600 students in that course because it's a heavier course. And several are from overseas and definitely from Canada. For sure. Now, that's a good segue into investing as a Reg CF investor. On Republic, there are certain provinces of Canada that for some reason, because of the Canadian rules, they're equivalent to the SEC, do not allow for investment into rounds. So there are some people who want to invest in Runner and who wanted to invest in Backstage and are not able to because they live in certain places in Canada. So when you go to it, before you get too excited, do a little research and find out if you're able to. I think you just plug in your information, they'll tell you pretty quickly if you're Canadian for some reason, and it's in other places around the world, it's easier to do. Okay, I'm going to answer a couple. One of Frederick's, we'll get started with one. I'll come back to it, so don't get rid of it. I'm going to come back to it too. The first question is, as an investor in Hirerunner with 26 years in this industry, are there any plans to connect Black talent in the diverse owned companies? I don't know if I understand that question. I'm assuming you're saying that you are an investor already in Hirerunner because we did a syndicate, so maybe that's the case. I'm assuming you have 26 years in this industry, or you may be saying that I do. And are there any plans to connect Black talent? Okay, yes. Are there any plans to connect Black talent in diverse owned companies? I didn't make it clear, but that's most of what we do. So 77% today, 77% of our runner talent, we call them runners, are people of color. And we do choose the wording very specifically to know that, we're going to have a deeper dive into that, but there's a lot of compliance stuff that you have to be aware of. So 77% are people of color. We do not have those stats on our customers yet, but it's happening left and right. It happens all the time. There are more Black women who are runners than any other group. And they're bringing in an average of $40,000 more per year in income through Runner. So they're an average making $40,000 a year. It's not their full-time job. That's the whole point. It's fractional. Mm-hmm. And if you think of it as an income stream, so some people are using Runner. I know one person in particular that I just met a couple of weeks ago. She works 15 hours a week through Runner. She plugs in, works where she wants to work, and she runs her business with the other hours. And this pays for the rent. Mm-hmm. And then she runs her business and she can turn it off, turn it on when she wants. It's very, very cool. 2, if a Black candidate is considered, what steps should they be aware after the interview? Black, brown, purple, you would apply. You would be invited to interview if once we're doing this in batches. So people are being invited in batches. And it's more than 1,500 people applied to be a runner in the first few weeks. So it's a lot to go through, and highest quality, of course. Then if you have an interview, you'll interview with at least 2 people on our team, and they are usually people, or they're definitely people who can make decisions, and they do make decisions. And then sometimes other executives at our team take a look at the video for even more commentary. And then we take you through an onboarding process. Now we've been in pilot for the past few months, so we've been fixing bugs and doing the thing. But the onboarding process takes you through our payroll, third-party payroll, background check a few things that you have to take care of, some, red tape you have to take care of. And then depending on your role, your desire to start, how many hours you have available, your pricing for your level, because we have different levels and tiers and things. There are some people who start work same week. There's some people who have to be in the system for 2, 3, 4 weeks before they even see their first gig. And the goal, as we work more and more this year, is to get it where you're fending off deals. Like you have too much deal flow coming your way when it comes to what customers you can work with. And that happens, the foundation we've been putting down, where we have about 300 runners now who have been onboarded as W-2, which I don't want to skip over. 300 W-2 workers since September of 2021, when we put the in motion to put the website up. That's 300 people we are the employer of record for. And we are aiming to get to 1,000 by the end of this year. Right now, about 10% of them are active because they're in our pilot and they're testing it. By the end of the year, we want to be at 1,000 with at least 30% active. So the number who is in the pool right now is going to be the same number that's going to be active within less than 6 months. So it's pretty, I think people are not quite gathering that piece. I think it's going to hit them a little bit later when we look back on the rest of the year. But that would make us one of the largest employers of Black women in the country. Right. If we hit these numbers. And I mean thriving, not using them as factory workers and you got to get this and that, thriving, using their intellect, using their skills and their talent. So to me, that gives me goosebumps and it makes me really excited about what's to come. And let me skip here now. Let me see if there's anything I'll come back to the Q&A and I'll go over. This page we just, wow, I think you're seeing all kinds of stuff. This page we just put together today. So it would have the most recent. It's not, exhaustive, but it's a good page to look at. Okay, so right now we have 1.3 million gross merchandise value, GMV. So as a marketplace, GMV, if anybody doesn't know, if you know, please feel free to skip this part, but for GMV, gross merchandise value, is just how much the platform is taking in income from customers. In our case, that's 1.3 million GMV run rate for the year, okay? In January, that number of run rate was less than a third. Wow. So we have grown by 300% plus from January. And that number is about to get really interesting September through December. Now you can quote me on that and we'll see what happens, but everything else that we've kind of predicted, at least when it comes to the steady incline, has worked out. We've learned a ton, we've been proven wrong a ton, of course, but a lot of that is just very steady. And as we get into the fall, right after Labor Day, things are about to crank up. So I love this map. You see a map of one color and you're like, okay, that's interesting. I can't really see the numbers or the letters here. This map every single week from, I want to say October or November until maybe April, we would every week when we had we have a call at the end of the week to talk to everybody and Runner, we would just watch these numbers saying, okay, what state did we get this time that is compliant? What state did we get this time? Because it was one by one by one. I have multiple voice messages on my phone from Kentucky and from Mississippi and from Missouri. And it's people were talking about your workers' comp and all these different types of things, but not just going to an ADP or going to Gusto and it's a one-stop shop. It's 50 different relationships that we have, 51 including District of Columbia. So when you think about competition, when you think about, well, why doesn't somebody else just do this? Multiple answers. One of them is it would take them at least, in my opinion, at least a year to catch up to us when it comes to compliance alone. And that's going to be our secret sauce for a while. See the size of the customer base. 80% have 1 to 10 employees. Very exciting. That's exciting to me. I know so many solopreneurs and 2-person founder teams who use Runner, or who are on the wait list to use Runner, who really want to use it. We're of course, we have Microsoft, Amazon Web Services, Uber. We've had conversations with many Fortune 500 companies about bigger and bigger deals, but I'm the most excited about this. And over time, we'll have to decide if we want to do one or the other, or if we can still do both. Because there are actually 2 different types of companies, if you're being real. But if I had to choose today, I would choose 1 to 10 employees any day of the week. I mean, I think that won't change. It's just a matter of being transparent and honest about it. Today, we have 1,900 plus applicants for runners to be runners. A lot of that, most of that is network effects. So it started with me putting things out there. Many people here who know my work, they want to work at Runner. They like the model, they get it. And then they tell their friends once they've had a great experience, or they tell their friends, even if they're in the Runner pool and they haven't gotten matched yet, they're telling their friends, hey, jump on this when things get really rolling. So 1,900 applicants, 1,500 or so came in the first few months. And then we kind of closed things off a little bit. 27 languages spoken. 27 languages, and we have runners in 33 states, which has gone up over the summer. That was probably 26 or so at the beginning of the summer. So we're compliant in all 50, and we have runners located in 33. So you see there's nearly 80% are women, nearly 80% are people of color. So, what is that, 64% or so, 60% or so women of color? Yeah. Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And if you do that at 1,000 that we want to be at, imagine we are employing 600 plus women of color the first 15 months in existence. And our goal is to, multiply that over the next few years. So this is just a quote if you want to read it from one of our customers. I can, you go ahead and read it out. You can read it to yourselves. I'll look at another question when you're
doing. Let me help you out with the questions, Arlen.
Okay, great.
Actually, I have one. It's a little biased, but I have one. Why did you want to come to the 10K project?
Oh, well, as I said, I'm not making this up. I have spent the last few years really advocating for crowdfunding and advocating for the face of crowdfunding change, or being representative. Because it's such a wonderful opportunity for us to start something from scratch and not have it be like the same old guard. So I love the diversity in crowd deals to begin with, then having had the experience with Backstage. And then I see essentially an experiment and project that I wanted to do myself, like that it's just laid out in front of me. And so as soon as I saw the name of it and the tagline, I was like, that's my people. Got to get over there. So, I don't know how far in you are to the 10,000 goal, but that changes the world when you reach it. Yeah, it changes the world. And I want, this isn't, well, I used to say this isn't Bitcoin when Bitcoin was doing well, but this isn't like overnight you're going to 10x. That's not what happens when it comes to these. These are long term. If you're thinking about investing, or if you've already invested, we're talking probably a few years, maybe a few months if something crazy happens, but probably a few years. And we're talking about, if you're putting in $500, I can't say, I can't give a commitment of what we're talking about if it returns at all. So all venture is risky and all could go to zero. So you may lose it completely. But it could be a multiple of 2 or 3 or 10 or 20. So it's not going to change your life per se for one deal. But imagine you have this portfolio That's what I like about one of the things I like what you're doing is you're building a portfolio of 10 or 20 companies that I'm an angel investor in over a year. And I spent maybe 2,000, maybe 5,000. That's exciting.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we're doing. And when we welcome the founders to the 10K, we have that in mind, right? Mm-hmm. How do we diversify who we bring, because we know our investors are building their portfolio. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what we do. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's wonderful. Anonymous says, you're a well-known name. Why the low minimum investment? We've seen founders with less clout, but want a higher minimum investment, like $500.
Oh, it never crossed my mind to have $500 personally, and this is no shade to anyone else who does 500. It never crossed my mind to have 500 as the minimum. I think administratively, you don't want to have less than 100, or I didn't want to have that just because it's so many people and it costs all this amount. But 100 to me is accessible. If I was going to say earlier to your point, and this is the same point, if I had access to this crowdfunding 10K project 7 years ago, I don't think I would have spent 3 years pounding the pavement, frankly, begging white older people for money to invest in other people's funds. I would have just started as an angel investor. I would have just been, let me put $100 in. Let me just make that work. But I didn't have that situation going on because of a lot of things, right? So I would rather kind of close the point I was making earlier too, which is I'm saying it's not going to be life-changing money. But what I want on the day that Runner has its exit meaning we sell to another company or we IPO, which is one form of an exit, it continues on, whatever that may be, where money is exchanged. On that day, just like with Backstage Capital, I do not want to be by myself. Mm-hmm. And I don't want it to be 12 of my executives who all became millionaires and bye-bye everybody else. I want it to be all the runners who were part of this, getting a piece, and all of the investors who said, yeah, I believe in you early. Yeah, you're not a big company yet. My friends don't know you, but I heard about you. I'm going to put 100 in. And if that means that 20 or 30% more people can do it because that threshold helps them, then let's go.
I love that. I absolutely love that. This question is an interesting question. Anonymous says, fractional work seems to be helpful for the worker, but what do the companies or clients think of the product? How many new companies or clients are you acquiring per month?
Yeah, so during our pilot, we had a wait list, and we still actually do, but the wait list, we kept it closed for most of the past few months, and we only piloted with a few so that we could get the process looking good before we let hundreds of people, companies come in. The quote that I just showed that's from a customer. It's very representative of what the customers feel. What most people feel when they work with Runner as a customer is relief. They feel like, I have been overwhelmed, there's too much on my plate, and I just found someone who immediately knows how to help me. Because Runner itself, capital Runner, capital R, is helping lowercase runners while they're there too, right? So that's the number one thing I sense from people is it's relief. Whether it's 10 hours a week, we have an executive assistant coming in to help them with scheduling, or it's 20 hours a week, we have a COO who is helping a company that just raised a round but doesn't know what to do with the money. Like that happens all the time too. Or a solopreneur who's working with someone who has 7 years of ops experience, who's almost like a phantom co-founder in a way, helping them with things that they just didn't know to ask or didn't know to do, giving them advice as a consultant almost. And so there's all kinds of up there. I mean, there's a lot of upside for it. So you had the kind of vibe, where you have, can I get on the wait list? People were texting me. People were like, can I get past the wait list? And I'm like, that's so interesting. That's like, can I get in the club? Can I get in the club? I used to work in live music and people would always ask me for tickets, and this felt the same way. Mm. So we now, just in the last few days, have started opening up the wait list on the customer side more and more and more. And now we're working with portfolios, because this is still the part of the question, right? We're working with the portfolios and the communities of our earlier investors. So, we have 20 investors, 30 investors in our first round who put in 50,000, 100,000, 250,000. They each have 10, 20, 30, 40 companies in their portfolio, and they want access to Runner. So now we're going through that list and taking on new people. I was just at Black Tech Week with two of my colleagues. I was just at Amex and a small business event in New York, and I'm in front of the audiences and I'm speaking to hundreds of people at a time, and it will be thousands of people at a time in September through December speaking engagements that I have. And I say, take out your phone and go to hirerunner.co and sign up in front of me. It's a very powerful thing. And as soon as it clicks for people that, wait a second, so I can be using this, like I always say, what would you do with 40 hours extra a week, a month? What would you do with 40 hours free from the minutia? Talk to your customers, talk to your potential investors if you want them, work on the product, rest, vacation, be with your family more. What would you do with 40 hours additional time a month for your company? That usually makes people really get it.
Yeah, I get it. As a founder, I absolutely get it. John said, who are your current competitors? He said, I think there are other job matching services for DEIA sensitive employers. What gives you an advantage against established market peers?
Yeah, there are definitely peers and people have been doing this a lot longer who talk about, diversity and inclusion, who are great at that, and great recruiters, by the way. What sets us apart is today, this is true, but it'll be even more true within the next few months. There will come a day, less than a year from now, maybe 6 months from now, some date, where you can take your phone out, you can hit the Runner app, and you will be able to book a new fractional chief operations officer for your startup that would have worked at a Fortune 500 before you, would only be working at a Fortune 500 if it weren't for a Runner, and is going to work with you and 2 other small businesses to give you an advantage that you've never had, and will be booked. It's a Tuesday, they're going to start on Thursday. And everything is seamless from that point on. To me, the ability to have someone of that caliber and stature booked the same way I can get a car to come pick me up and take me to the grocery store, that's interesting. That's the difference. The Corn Ferry can't do that. Indeed can't do that. Parking lots like ZipRecruiter, no shade to the people, but to the product, parking lots like ZipRecruiter can't do that on any day. Runner can do that today.
Is there an industry limitation? So in the chat, Latoya Rucker, who is one of the founders of Collexiums, a cannabis company out of Detroit, they were one of the founders that pitched with 10K. Is that industry an industry that your runners would be able to work in, or do you limit certain industries that could be a little controversial to some?
So far, we don't have any limitations because we have to deal with compliance per state. There will come a day when someone says, I want you to work at this porn company, or I want you to do this thing, right? And we'll have to face it on an individual basis. Today, I do not know of a cannabis issue, but I don't know all 50 states. So that person, as a customer, that's why they have the onboarding call, because we quickly look it up, we find out what they need, and we let them know. Now, I believe we already have companies that are cannabis companies that are customers. So, I can't tell you with 100% certainty that your state and your company would be okay, but I can tell you that there's a lot of freedom in what we do. And we think about it so thoughtfully too. We even when it comes to our background checks, if background checks were the thing, I don't know, my brother could never work for me. You know what I mean? Like, he's been pulled over for marijuana. He's been pulled over for nothing. If it was about what school you went to, I wouldn't be able to work at Runner if we cared about what school and how many years and this and that, because I didn't go to college. I think everything we do is very methodical and thoughtful from different lenses, and we will get it wrong sometimes, and then hopefully we'll get it right very quickly.
Fred said, how do you address companies or customers that want to hire your runners permanently?
Yes, so we recognize that many of our peers are going to have that option. So very early on, we decided that that was something that we would do. Now, our bread and butter is the fractional, because we like that freedom for our runners. But we also talk to people. We have a great example is an investor who said, hey, I don't need a fractional person. I actually can afford the person. This is the rate. I just need help. I can't find the person. Like, I put it out everywhere. I just can't find that person. So we did a direct hire. And direct hires, at this point, we charge 10% of first year, which is very low compared to the rest of the market. But to us, it's the right amount. It is an amount, so it feels right. And then also it encourages people to say, I love this runner. Let me not. Runner doesn't want to block the blessings, as it were, right? We don't want to stop people from going where they want to go. But we just kind of make it fair for everybody involved.
Nice. Anonymous says, can you talk about the executive team of Runner? Who are your stars on the team?
Yeah, let me do this if I can. Give me a moment, please. Make this. Okay. Again, let's see if I can do this without showing you my entire desktop. Okay, you should be seeing the website.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the Runner crew. I'll start with Diana Moore. So Diana was at a Fortune 500 for 24 years. Without a break, she started at Runner because she loved what we were doing. She started as a runner, consultant runner, my first month. She was actually helping me with profiles for runners. So meta. And I hired her fractionally because I said, I'm going to bootstrap and I'm going to do exactly what I'm going to use the product. So brought her in as a runner, fractional runner. Over the next few weeks, she saw what we were doing and she said, I want to be part of this. So now she has, the highest role there. You have Lauren, who worked with her in the same company, 15 years experience. They have a really cool podcast interview on this website on hirerunner.co. You can just kind of go here and check it out. Melanie, our director of customer success. I love her story. It's funny. I actually know her twin sister. Her twin sister was one of the first, not interns, but entrepreneurs in residence at Backstage in like 2016. And I had never met Melanie. And when I announced Runner, her sister, Kelly, got in touch with me and said, hey, would you look at Melanie as a runner? She's looking for work, or she's, interested in fractional, whatever, in addition to her own company. So I looked at it, of course. I was like, of course I'll look. And so I said, can you be my EA, my fractional EA for Runner? Sure, I'll work a few hours a week. She was so good. She was so good right off the bat. Today, she's our director of customer success because she was able to work her way up from a fractional gig, prove out all sorts of things on her own, and work her way up to this. And she knows every customer's first, last name, probably their blood type, what they had for dinner last night. She is magnificent in this role and just educates herself all the time. Nicole and Michelle Michelle's been around as long as Diana and Melanie. Nicole's newer, has been taking on incredible reins. And just our wonderful recruiting team, and the rest of our team. So I can't say enough about them. We also have a few runners internally. I think I may have mentioned that, but we do have a few runners internally. So we hire 2 or 3 runners to work 10, 15, 20 hours a week.
Very nice. Let's go back to some of Frederick's questions.
Okay.
What type of companies are you placing the candidates in?
Oh, they run the gamut. Most of them, as 80% have 1 to 10 employees. A lot of them have just the one person, the solopreneur. They're companies like consulting agencies for, marketing consultant agency for small businesses. And so they're not going to go out and find or look for venture funding. They're not trying to do these rounds of funding, but they're making money off their clients, and they could use a helping hand, and we plug in a runner. There are a few nonprofits who are customers, which I think has been, people ask, can I be a customer and be a nonprofit? Absolutely. I think it's a great use case. We have we have like 2 or 3 customers who are who've raised like $20-30 million, but they want to first see the role in action, right? They want to be able to bring 2 or 3 people in and plug in these roles and not commit to $120,000 a year when they could see the role itself in action for 3 months and then either hire from us or from elsewhere, which I think is quite interesting. But it's mostly people who are working on, any runs the gamut. It can be a beauty product. We have plenty of that. It's essentially the people who apply for funding at Backstage in most cases. It's that same kind of vibe to it. Some government people who use government contractors, or who are vendors for government contracts. A few of our portfolio companies are customers, which is really cool. So
Okay. What's the strategy to retain employees of Hirerunner during the Great Resignation?
They're coming to us during the resignation. I think I mentioned that before, where we are their flexible solution, because we are their employer of record, but we don't tell them how many hours they have to work a week. You lose the ability to have certain perks if you stop working for I think it's 3 months in a row. If you don't get a gig, you lose certain perks. So you're incentivized to keep getting gigs, but you can do whatever you want. And so people are like, I've had conversations with people who are like, I'm working at this bank in New York. I make, mid 6 figures, like really, really incredible gigs. I've been here for 12 years. I don't feel fulfilled. All I want to do is work with a fresh, dynamic founder on something that's going to change the world in their opinion. And I want to do that for 10, 15, 20 hours a week and spend the other time working on my company or working at the other place, but only working a few hours at Runner. Like, it runs the gamut. And so the Great Resignation, we are where they go when they resign.
I see that. I felt that in my spirit just now, Arlen. I just felt that in my entire spirit. Wow. What's your exit strategy?
So we don't sit around thinking about it all the time. It's important for investors to know, how am I going to make my money back with a few extra friends along the way, right? If I put in $1, where am I getting my extra dollars from? We don't think about it all the time because we're focused on the customer, the runner, the team. But there are some obvious ideas, and it's just going to depend a lot on what the rest of this year looks like, as far as so many things, because so much is going to happen this next 5 months that'll tell us what we want to be and who we are. One idea is for us to sell to, and it could be, in the next few months, or, it could be in the next few years, but to sell to a Korn Ferry, a Kelly Services, an Act One, someone who has been around for decades and makes billions of dollars, but wants a fresh way to even take what we do with operations and kind of expand it to 10 other verticals that we wouldn't do as a startup because we want to focus, right? So I could see that being really attractive. I could see someone like Indeed or the company that bought General Assembly. I could see them coming in and wanting to have a conversation. We've had 2 conversations, very early stage, with 2 companies that I didn't list here, but they're so early that I don't think too much of them. But they're interesting. It's interesting to see how people are thinking of us. Another option would be for us to stay private for several years, build it to thousands and thousands of runners, be self-sustained or raise a lot of venture capital, and either cash people out kind of midway through. This happens a lot where company becomes worth $300, $400, $500 million. Your investors who came in at 20, 25, 30 million say, hey, 10x me, I'm out, I'm good. 10x me, it's been 3 years, let's go. Or take it to IPO if that's what ends up happening. I think with the group that we have now, with the executive team we have now, I think with the moment we have now, I think the next 5 months are going to be really telling about what we become.
Okay. Is Hirerunner a PEO?
Employer of record, or what does the PEO stand for?
Let's see.
I know the
Latoya,
term.
you want to tell us what a PEO stands for?
I think we are actually.
Let me see if I can find it. Look at it real quick.
Does Latoya know if she asked?
Yeah, Latoya, you want to put it in the chat what a PEO is? I get professional employer organization, but
you said that must have been a mistake. Oh, there's a different.
Oh no, it's 2 Latoyas. Yeah, 2 Latoyas.
Professional employment organization. I don't know. I'd have to ask our CPA, our accounting team, who just went through the 50 states with us. I should know. It's a good question. I will know next time. I should know. Well, ask.
Let's see. Brindalyn says, Arlen, do you find that you have to explain Reg CF guidelines to some high net worth investors? If so, what kind of investor is lacking knowledge about the 5 million ceiling?
I mean, it's not that I have to explain it. It's like, do they take it seriously or not if they're high net worth? Some people think it's just lowbrow or whatever, and that's their problem. That's really silly on their part because they're about to get like whooped by the crowd. If you go to hirerunner.co, at the top of the page, it says invest in and Runner. It also takes you through some education. I think it's 3 or 4 videos that we actually went through an hour each or so and do some really deep dive education about it. So anybody who's interested, who either wants more education or they have a friend who has the money and they're like, I don't know what this is, that's the place to go for sure, because we commission that on purpose. But no, it's almost like the people who are high net worth who are not interested, we don't even have the conversation. We're not even talking about it for me to have to explain it. But I get what you're saying, but no, I don't spend too much time trying to convert. I spend time trying to inspire the people who already get it.
Yeah. Latoya says, I don't understand how a COO can come in and impact with 10 hours. Are there minimum hours to book?
Yeah, minimum is 5 a week to be active. That's all I can tell you is that it happens. That's why people are so blown away by it, because you have to imagine a lot of times we are educating the customer. So a customer might come to us and say, I think I need an EA or a virtual assistant. I just know I'm overwhelmed. That's all I know. And we'll have the intake conversation with them. And we'll say, actually, you could use an EA, but where you are with your company, a COO, because you have these other 2 roles, a COO could come in for fewer hours, but higher per hour, right? So the same budget that you have, and could put you in a position where you would know what to tell the EA to do. right? A lot of times it's, you don't know what you need until it's there. That's why runners, and we don't do a great job of explaining this publicly. I don't do a great job of it either, but a big part of what we do is in that education of it. That's why we don't have everything automated yet. We started out, we were going to have everything automated. It was going to be all in the app. And then we realized there are a lot of things that we can answer that if we have 100 examples of, we can then articulate that in the app itself to our potential customers, et cetera, through video content, things like that. But no, we don't place anybody somewhere where they're not going to be impactful and they're just there collecting. And believe me, if the rare times that that's happened where that person didn't feel they were getting their money's worth, they canceled that week. We hear about it immediately. But you have repeat customers week after week.
Latoya, I'll add, as a COO of a startup, right? 10K's been around, I think we're on year 3.5 now. Sometimes you're so in the day-to-day that it would be awesome to have a COO, right? A well-established COO come in and remind you of the strategy you still need to solve for, because you're doing the work. Like here at 10K, it's just Cherie and I, right? We've got an amazing admin and social media person. We've got a marketer, but it's just Cherie and I from a strategy standpoint. And we also are doing the day-to-day, right? So to be able to have someone come in and remind you of your role, right? And be able to give you that outline of the things you need to focus on, that's well worth it. That's how 10 hours turns into 100 hours of value, because I don't have 10 hours some days to remember the strategy behind this because I'm doing the work.
And it's so true. It's exactly the right tone there and are the right words there. And so many of these COO, if you're in a COO tier or a consultant tier at Runner, you have years of experience at Fortune 1000 companies, or you've exited your own company. I mean, major experience, especially, the higher, I can't think of the word, but the higher tier you go. And so it really is like I would hire, as much experience as I had, I would hire a COO from Runner to come in to work on Arlen Was Here Productions, Arlen Was Here LLC. I have multiple companies outside of Backstage and Runner, and I have a runner. I use a very high level, high tier EA runner who does stuff that I'm like, oh my gosh, I hired her. Yeah. So I wish we had more time to talk about it more, but I do have a hard out at 6.
Okay, let's get some more specific questions about Runner. So who determines the rates the runner is paid?
So for the first few months, it was an individual thing. Some people knew their rates they wanted, and we matched it against our take rate. And some people didn't know, and we helped them get to it. Now we spent the last 10 months getting to a point where we now have a grid, and you have 4 or 5 different tiers, beginner, intermediate, expert, et cetera, and you have 4 or 5 different tiers of the role. And now you match your role with your tier, and we decide what your tier is when it comes to proficiency. That's what I was looking for earlier, proficiency. So we help decide what the role itself is. Are you an EA or a general ops, et cetera? And then we actually determine what your tier is, which is, could be something, because you may say I'm advanced, and we may say one notch lower, but it's much better to start off lower than you think, in our opinion, and work your way up than to be demoted, because that kind of gets you out of the line. So there's a grid that we use when you sign up. And it's there's no runner that's paid less than, I think it's $23 an hour. Average is more like $45 an hour before our take rate. So we're talking, I worked with someone who their average was like $17 an hour for their virtual EAs. We're not doing that. We're talking, it is a higher number because that's what we believe it's worth. So the customer says, oh my goodness, it's $50 an hour. And we say, look, you don't have to do the 20 hours that you thought you had to do. You have to do 10 hours because it's worth it. That's why it's worth it, because they're going to do the thing you think someone else would take 20 hours to do in 10.
Very good. And what's the percentage of remote roles? Are all of these runner roles remote? Or do some of them?
No, they're not all remote. Most of them are. We've had installations with people like Capital Factory in Austin and others where it's in person. Runner, the whole reason we call it Runner is because I used to work in live music, and as a production coordinator or tour manager in every city, I would get 1 or 2 or 3 runners that were local or who were local and who could run around and help me in that city. And so there is an entire tier of the 5 that is an in-person runner. Not so much like a TaskRabbit kind of thing, but more like, let's say you're going to a conference. You're either going to speak at one or have a booth at one, or you simply want to be able to keep up with all the people you meet. You bring your runner with you and they help you disperse information, or they take notes for you, or they help, go talk to my assistant for the day and they're going to take down your information. I'll follow up with you. That's the type of thing that more and more you'll see as we get further and further out of the pandemic.
Very good. Just want to make sure I get all the runner related questions. Anonymous says the campaign says current CEO. With your numerous projects, how long do you see yourself as the CEO, and what is the succession plan?
Yep, we have one in place. It will be announced September, which is our 1-year anniversary, and it is very stable, smart, and every single investor is going to be excited about it.
Nice.
Thanks for asking. It's a good question.
That was a good question. And Ty is one of the founders of a startup called Udl out of Memphis, another amazing startup. Ty says, did you allow any safes in the beginning or early stage, or all rounds with terms?
Nope, safes, that's what we use in our first round of the 2.35 million. That's what we're using now. And I will admit that the first round was higher, was during the frothy period. So these were fast checks in, high valuation or high terms. And then everybody kind of got a reality check midsummer.
And how do you vet the COOs and similar experienced professionals who help others? Do they have to qualify via some metrics?
Yeah, we have some internal metrics. We don't at this point have a full-on proprietary system for vetting. There are just several people on the team who are taking them through, as a recruiter might do, taking them through different processes. That's definitely something that, will be part of what we do in the future. Having our own secret sauce, how did we get here? But we had to do, and we still have to do so much of it manually to get that process. You don't get any data or any algorithm or any AI without having a human first run the process. Mm-hmm. And that's where we are. So you won't see anything automated for the next 6 months, but we're definitely building upon a proprietary foundation.
Do you also have attorneys, CPAs, that level of professional service provider as runners?
We don't today. We're being very intentional about staying in the operations lane because it is such a blue ocean. There's places you can go for tech talent, for marketing talent, for sales talent. We do, however, have the sandbox that we talk about a lot internally. Where do we go next if we were to go to another vertical? Product manager is very interesting to us because it's really hard to interview for a product management. A lot of product management roles are the people who fill those roles. And this is I want to say it properly, but bear with me if you're in product management. What I've learned from several product managers is that a lot of times it's difficult for them to interview. Like they don't interview as well, but they're like brilliant people doing work that's really rare. So it would be really interesting for us to come in and say, we're going to do the interview process without all of these things that some other big company might say is a red flag. And we're just going to get you some talent. Right. So that's something we're thinking about. We're thinking like CPA is definitely another one because we get that request often. And we have kind of a really interesting and unique situation with my CPA, who's become Runner CPA, and their whole team. So there are a few places that, remember I said earlier that I think one of the exit strategies is like a major recruiting company exec search coming in and just taking our model for operations, acquiring us for that, and then having us apply it to 10 other verticals. That's why I see that, because you really could apply it a lot of places. I'm going to have to go in just a couple minutes here.
So let's give our final call to action.
Okay.
First of all, thank you again.
Thank y'all. I really appreciate it.
And blessing us in this way. To the community, thank you for coming out. To those of you who this was your first time, thank you. And please, please join us again. We do the Bet on Black Pitches every Tuesday. You do have to be a member to join, but please go to our website at the10kproject.com to learn how to become a member. But for those of you who have been wowed by this business model, and this is not investment advice, right? Because I'm not a financial advisor. I want to make that very clear. We want you to do your due diligence. We shared the campaign page with you. The information is there, all of the details of the campaign page. For those questions that we didn't get to as it relates to the project itself, the campaign itself, please feel free to put that on the discussion page at the link. But my call to action, I'll let Arlen close with hers. My call to action is the call to action I give every single week, is that these founders need these campaign links to go viral, right? They need us to share the heck out of them. The more people that see them, the more people that will research and learn about the project. And then hopefully the more investments that will come from that, right? Arlen shared that her Backstage campaign got to the $5 million in 8 days, right? That was magical. And I must say, in full disclosure, I am a Backstage Capital investor, and it was magical. And it was one of those times I was sure happy I didn't procrastinate, because it was so we gotta be ready to show up. We gotta be ready to show up, right? Our founders need us. They are building things that are going to make lives easier, right? For us, for our children, and for generations to come, and for each other, for other founders. We got to be able to show up and show out. And so I'm asking you as the 10K community to show up for this campaign, whatever that means to you, right? Sharing it, investing in it, if that's what you choose to do, but show up for it, because founders like Arlen need our help. And because she's a VC doesn't make her need our help any less. She's here, right? So that even speaks volumes. To have a VC come with their project, that lets me know we're in the right space, guys. Yeah. Equity crowdfunding is not going anywhere. We're in the right place and the right space.
Incredible. I don't know if I need to say much more than that. I appreciate you all. I definitely want to welcome you into our investor group. You see, where we are now. You see how, I can't go to a city in the United States without running into somebody who's invested in the Backstage Reg CF, and it's family. It's really, really exciting. Not just put the money, put in 500, make 1,000, whatever it may end up being. It's part of a community, and it's part of a movement. And I appreciate it. So when you invest in Runner, you're investing in what will eventually, hopefully, be thousands of women of color making an income. Also, go to the site, go to hirerunner.co, check out if you want to be a runner, if you want to be a customer. We also very randomly but excitedly have our own soap opera, our own audio soap opera that is produced in Hollywood with SAG actors. So it's actual production, like an immersive podcast, like a fiction. It's found on the website. So get into it. Season 1 happened a few weeks ago. Get into it because season 2 is coming soon, and there's a big announcement about season 2. And I know I mentioned it for a reason. When you see the announcement, you'll see why. So get into it.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting.
You know, I had to watch my stories. You know, I watch my General Hospital. I had to have my stories for our runners, you know.
I love it. Our own version of Luke and Laura.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's so good. It's called The Valley, by the way. Go check it out today. You're gonna get hooked on the first episode.
I love it. Arlen, thank you so much for taking the time to come talk to us. You know, congratulations in advance. It's amazing. And I'm Cherie and I have to talk because I think we need a runner. So
Hey,
I have been convinced we need a runner.
I'm happy to make that happen.
All right, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Peace and blessings.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.